Member Weezer, been joined by Council Member Marquise Harris Dawson, Council Member Mitch Englander, and we have quorum. We'll get started with the multiple agenda item comment cards. This is a time for the public to speak on items where people wish to speak on more than one item. And people are provided 2 minutes to speak. First one is undeterminable. I don't know what this means. The second card is Herman.
Good afternoon. We're all aware of the Director's Planning Oral Status Report, but relative to the ongoing development of city planning and policies, you continue to discriminate under the so-called Housing Authority of Real Development. For whatever purpose you have in life, I really feel that, in my opinion, it's fucked up. When you have the Director of Planning, you, Mr. Weezer, not foreseeing the problem.
Sir, Herman.
I'm on item 1, sir.
Yeah, can you please hold, you're on item 1?
Yes.
Okay.
It says Director of Planning, oral status, fucked up report of relative to the ongoing fucking development of city fucked up planning policies. That's where I'm at.
Okay, well, sir, if you could keep your comments to items on the agenda.
Okay, well, I signed up for item 1 and 7, sir. Now I'm going to item 7 since I got rudely disturbed by your comment of interruption. But now in item 7, CD 13, regarding mitigated negative declaration, in which I am opposition and deny the appeal because there's not enough information regardless of how long it's taking us. Wow, this mic is really loud. I don't want to sound like I'm destroying your equipment here. I've been accused of many things. But once again, the vesting of the zoning change in high district, all this fucked up bullshit. It's ridiculous. Ground floor bar, like we really need it, a lounge, outdoor activity, courtyards. Really, these amenities are for who? For the disabled? Is it for the homeless? Because approximately 90-foot tall, 79,621 square foot mixed-use building ain't gonna fucking impact anyone who needs to have a part in this. You see it, bro? Rule 23, the same rule that Herb Wesson Jr. and Rue ignore. Get yourself in trouble with the Ralph M. Brown Act, because that's how you violate my rights, fucked up.
Okay, now we will go to the consent calendar, which we have item number 2. We will move that on consent. If there are no objections, so ordered. Item number 3, we will continue to May the 2nd per the request of Council District 13. Item number 4, we will continue for 60 days per the applicant's request. So ordered, and for the record, Councilmember Cedillo has joined us.
Councilman, on item 3, is that being continued?
Number 3?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's continued to May the 2nd.
Okay.
You okay with that?
Absolutely. I just didn't hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just checking. All right, let's go to our action items. Item number 1, a report from the Director of Planning, Mr. Bertoni. No report from the Planning Department. Thank you. We'll note and file, receive and file item number 1. So let's turn to item number 5, and may you please read that into the record.
Sure. Item 5, Councilman, this is an appeal filed by Beatrice Leighton Martin. They're appealing the action of the Deputy Advisory Agency, which approved a tentative tract map for a subdivision of a 15 and the construction of a 15-unit condo in CD5.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will first hear a report from staff on this item.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Courtney Shum with the Department of City Planning. I'm the project planner for the case before you, an appeal of a tentative tract map approval for the subdivision of 15 condominiums at 1123 to 1129 Shenandoah Street in Council District 5. The appeal points are focused on neighborhood compatibility, the loss of rent-stabilized units, the level of environmental review, and the cumulative and ongoing construction impacts in the surrounding area. With regard to neighborhood compatibility and design, the decision to approve the tentative tract map is based on the subdivision of land. In considering the tract map, the advisory agency does not have the authority to require projects to be designed in any particular architectural style. With regard to the loss of rent-stabilized units, the project will result in the demolition of a duplex and 6-unit apartment building, which are both subject to the rent stabilization ordinance. In order to remove these units from the rental market, the applicant is subject to the Ellis Act and may be required to pay relocation fees to existing tenants to the satisfaction of HCID LA. According to HCID, the properties were Ellised back in November, and it appears that all relocation fees have been paid. There is also a condition of approval within the tract case that the project obtain the appropriate clearances from HCID. In terms of environmental review, the project was issued a Class 32 categorical exemption, or CE, as its environmental clearance. Planning staff went through the appropriate steps to determine that the project qualifies for a CE, including reviewing the exceptions to categorical exemptions and criteria for Class 32 infill development projects under the state and city CEQA guidelines. The appellant argues that a CE should not have been issued because ongoing construction in the immediate surrounding neighborhood has resulted in significant cumulative impacts with regard to traffic, noise, air quality, and water quality. They reference several multifamily development projects in the immediate neighborhood that have negatively affected their quality of life over the past 2.5 years due to construction noise, dust, vibration, traffic, parking, sidewalk closures, and water service interruptions. The department maintains that there are no circumstances in the surrounding area that would preclude the issuance of a CE for the proposed project. A categorical exemption still requires a level of review to determine that thresholds of significance are not exceeded. For instance, with regard to traffic impacts, the project at 15 units does not exceed the threshold of 36 units to require a traffic study as established by DOT. Construction impacts are temporary in nature. The applicant anticipates that construction would start in June and last approximately 18 months. Of the 5 nearby developments cited by the appellant, only 2 appear to be active construction sites, and the construction is expected to only temporarily overlap with the project's construction schedule. It should also be noted that the only discretionary action is the tract map to create for-sale units. The same building could be built by right with apartment units without environmental review at a development intensity that has been anticipated and analyzed under the EIR for the Wilshire Community Plan. Construction impacts would be mitigated to the extent feasible by existing city regulations and general construction requirements, including limited construction hours and permits for street closures or construction staging within the public right-of-way. That said, this is a neighborhood clearly in transition, and planning staff recognizes the appellant's frustrations with ongoing construction and is available to act as a liaison between the appellant, applicant, and city enforcement agencies to address any construction nuisances that may arise in the area. In conclusion, staff recommends that the appeal be denied and that the decisions of the Central Los Angeles Area Planning Commission and Deputy Advisory Agency in approving the tentative tract map be sustained. Thank you for your time. I'm available for any questions should you have them.
Thank you. We will now hear from the appellant, Beatrice Layton Martin. Welcome. By our committee rules, you are allotted 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I stand by my appeal. In particular, the city has failed to make the findings required by CEQA 15332D, which requires that the project would not result in any significant effects regarding traffic, noise, air quality, and water quality. I already elaborated at length at the other hearings, but just briefly about traffic. Traffic is already collapsing right now. It sometimes takes me 2 traffic cycles to make it half a block to Pico. It's extremely hazardous still as pedestrians. Sometimes just by one project that was going on, the sidewalk was blocked for over a year on one side, DWP trucks on the other side. I'm having a 3-year-old. I don't know how to safely cross the street between swinging trucks and DWP jackhammering and all kinds of closures and idling trucks. Noise, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, including holidays. Noise is toxic to the human system. And just one project exposed us to 2.5 years of earth-shattering noise. Air quality, it's nauseating. Between molten plastic, sewer smells, and always exhaust from equipment, from trucks, it's unbearable and definitely hazardous to our health. Water quality, I don't know, other than that the water's shut off all the time by DWP to cater to these developers. Not having water affects my quality of water as well. And we're just talking about one project of similar size than this one that affected all that. Moreover, CEQA exemption is inapplicable when the cumulative effect of successive projects of the same type, same place, over time is significant. As just said, this one project is already significant. We now have 5 projects within half a block, either going or about to go. You're turning our neighborhood into a gigantic construction site without any overview. It definitely affects our quality of life to the extremely negative. It makes our place hardly livable. And even after, when all this is done, all the beautiful duplexes are gone, all the moderate income families are kicked out of affordable housing to make room for giant ugly boxes catering to the rich, this is still not over. The neighborhood is overwhelmed. We already have power outages, sometimes for more than 24 hours. The neighborhood just can't take it. But the city just makes self-serving statements that it's not significant, that without providing any analysis whatsoever, the Wilshire Community Plan has not been updated in 16 years. We, on the other hand, gave testimony, both written and oral, and so did another member of the community. And this sets forth fact that provides substantial evidence of significant adverse impacts from these projects, both individually and cumulatively. And I'm willing to repeat that under the penalty of perjury, and this is evidence. The city has done nothing whatsoever to prove their point of view. You allow moderate income families to be erased from this neighborhood and overwhelm it. And I'm hoping that since you gentlemen on your websites have statements like you want to strengthen tenant protection, you're on the forefront of protecting our neighborhoods, and you appreciate the people in the neighborhood, not the rich people coming in after everybody else is kicked out, that you actually have an open ear and think our neighborhood deserves a thorough environmental evaluation. And talking about relocation fees that have been paid, nowadays that might pay for the move, but you all know these people will have to pay at least twice as much now for another apartment to rent, or move way, way out. So that doesn't mean anything, throwing them a few $1,000s. So again, I hope you help us still have a livable neighborhood and not just a gigantic construction site, something where my daughter can actually go outside and play. Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant, Elizabeth von Verd.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Elizabeth Von Vern of Advanced Engineering and Consulting, and I represent the applicant, Itzhaki Investments. This is a by right project. It is currently in plan check as an apartment building. The owner made the decision that they wanted to sell condominiums rather than rent apartments. Therefore, they had to go through the discretionary action with planning. The discretionary action does not involve any construction, so the categorical exemption makes sense. They wouldn't have to have any CEQA oversight for the by right apartment building for just a building permit under building and safety. We did look at the 5 construction projects that the appellant cites, and we did review them with our environmental consultant. Some of those projects are complete. Only 2 do appear to be active. And the environmental consultant's opinion was that the construction projects are either far enough away from her residence or have intervening structures that will attenuate the effects of the noise from those projects on her residence, both individually and cumulatively. As far as the architecture, there's no CDO, there's no HPOZ, so there is nothing that would say that they have to retain the nature of the duplexes in the area. Furthermore, the environmental impacts as far as cumulative impacts, the city's general plan, EIR, is responsible for evaluating the entire build-out of the area. So if the entire area were to be built out at its by right, the EIR would prevail, and since we are not exceeding what is allowed to us under the general plan and the zoning, there is no CEQA requirement for this project. So we hope that you deny the appeal and uphold our project so that we may move forward, and I thank you for your attention, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Anyone here from Council District 5? No? Okay. On the questions to staff, this was a categorical exemption?
That's correct, a Class 32 infill development categorical exemption.
And under your opinion and review, it was the appropriate procedure to use here?
Yes, that's correct. We reviewed the thresholds with regard to air quality, noise, traffic, and water quality. With regard to air quality, an air quality study was prepared, finding that impacts would be less than significant. With regard to traffic, the project results in a net increase of 7 units. This is well below the threshold of 36 units to require a traffic study. With regard to noise, the project is subject to our city's noise ordinance, which limits construction hours that are intended to mitigate impacts to less than significant levels. And with regard to water quality, LADWP did review this project and determined that it would be serviced by existing water lines. And there is a condition that the applicant receive a clearance from DWP as part of their tract approval.
Okay, and with respect to the tenants who are under rent control here, did they get the appropriate, I think you said HCID confirmed that the tenants have received or in the process of receiving relocation fees?
Yes, according to HCID, they did receive the relocation fees. There were, the applicant provided a list of 6 tenants, and it sounds like from HCID that all these fees were paid.
Okay. Is CD5 here? Welcome.
Council members, good afternoon. Faisal Al-Sari on behalf of Councilmember Koretz. Apologies for earlier. We are supporting the department's recommendation on this. We are definitely sympathetic to the appellants And what we'd like to do is work with the department as well as building and safety to address any sort of construction issues as they arise. But at this time, we are supporting the department's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, and for the record, we've been joined by Councilmember Price. We'll move to deny the appeal and thereby sustain the determination of the Deputy Advisory Agency in approving the tract map and adopting the categorical exemption for the properties at 1123 through 1129 South Shenandoah Street. Any objections? Seeing none, so ordered. Okay, we will now move to item 6.
Item 6, Councilman, this is an appeal filed by the project applicant, St. Mary and St. Athanasius Orthodox Coptic Church. They're appealing the action of the CPC, which approved various conditions as it relates to the conditional use to add a private elementary school with a maximum of 135 students, and disapproved various other entitlements as it relates to 2 additional senior citizen independent living residential buildings located in CD 12.
Okay, Mr. England, do we have staff here? Do you want to start this off, or do you wish staff to give us an overview?
Have staff give us a quick overview.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dan O'Donnell with the Planning Department's Valley Office. As mentioned in the intro, this case involves an appeal for the St. Mary and St. Athanasius Coptic Orthodox Church located at 17349 through 17455 Roscoe Boulevard in the community of Northridge. The site currently consists of a church established in 1994 and a 45-child private preschool, as well as a 58-unit senior independent living residential building. Both the preschool and the independent living residential building were approved as accessory uses to the church in the RA zone by a zoning administrator in 2002. The church requested additional conditional use permits to add the 135-student private elementary school and 2 additional senior independent living buildings totaling 77 units as accessory uses to the church. The Planning Commission approved the addition of the elementary school with 35 conditions, but disapproved the 2 additional residential buildings, together with an associated zoning administrator adjustment to permit the 2 residential buildings to observe a 25-foot front yard setback along Roscoe in lieu of the required prevailing setback, and site plan review for a development that results in an increase of 50 or more dwelling units. The church is appealing 4 of the 35 conditions imposed on the elementary school, as well as the denial of the senior independent living residential buildings and the related zoning administrator adjustment and site plan review. The Commission denied the 2 senior independent living residential buildings because the required conditional use finding of conformance with the general plan could not be made. Multifamily residential development is not permitted in the RA zone by right and should not be permitted by conditional use in a very low 1 residential density land use plan designation unless compelling justifications exist, which the Commission did not believe were present in this case. The Commission also found that without a demonstrated caregiver connection and relationship between the church use and the proposed senior independent living buildings, the buildings could not be found to be an accessory use to the church. The Commission's findings stated that the accessory use, as defined in the municipal code, is a use which is customarily incidental to the main building or use of the land. While the housing of clergy is customarily and incidental to churches, a multifamily apartment building, even if intended exclusively for elderly members of the church congregation, is not. Since the church by law cannot discriminate against tenants based on religion, the units cannot be restricted to congregants of the church or even solely to members of the Coptic Orthodox faith. And the buildings, in essence, would be a senior market rate multifamily apartments, which is not permitted by conditional use in the RA zone. The church does not propose to provide any services or programs such as assisted living care, skilled nursing care, and/or Alzheimer's dementia care for the seniors living in the building. The commission concluded that the proposed residential buildings will operate as market-rate multifamily apartment buildings, which is not customarily incidental to the main church use. The 4 conditions appealed by the church related to the approval of the elementary school are a requirement to implement a transportation demand management plan, a plan approval condition compliance report requirement after 2 years of operation of the school, and a requirement to provide valet parking for certain well-attended religious services and for certain well-attended special events. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Englander.
Great, thank you very much. And before I go through some of the suggested changes and outcome of this that I'd like to see, let me before we go into public comment as well, because I've got several changes that, if I could, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the staff, planning staff. It's just been a long, complicated, wound-up project for quite some time with submissions and resubmissions and resubmissions. Particularly want to thank my own planning staff, Anna, as well, and working with the community and the applicant and planning department, because it's been going on for quite some time. It is complicated. But I believe that the church and related uses have really become an integral part of the community, and they provide valuable and necessary multi-generational services from senior housing, school instruction, and certainly religious guidance. And I appreciate the feedback, particularly from the neighborhood council. The Northridge South Neighborhood Council and all the immediate neighbors have spent a great deal of time combing through not only all the various applications, but addressing a lot of the issues. And their inputs help to craft new conditions included in this grant, which should hopefully address, I believe will address, the operational concerns. And I want to stress that, particularly to the church, that these conditions really need to be adhered to. And we've heard repeated concerns from the community regarding, for example, the trees on the northern edge of the site and the health of the trees that need to be assessed and any replacements replanted within 60 days and then maintained in perpetuity. And I'll go through some of the very specific and delineate some of the very specific modified conditions and suggestions, as well as additional conditions that I would like to suggest. We've also heard about, for example, a metal storage bin in the parking lot. And I don't know why they're there, but I'd like to see that those are removed immediately because they take up essential and required parking spaces. So if they're still there, they need to be removed, and that'll be a condition as well, that those not be placed back. The requirement for valet parking on high holiday services or high attendance holidays, as you suggested, as from staff, I believe it's about four of those a year, but we'd like to see a list of all of the festivals, fundraisers, special events outside of religious services, including the high-impact events and high holiday services that require additional parking for those, for that requirement. So in terms of a modified condition of approval, in terms of item 5 on the arborist report, within 30 days of the effective date of this grant, so we would like to update that, and then within 60 days of the effective date of this grant, and these have been circulated in writing, so I'm not going to read them verbatim, but whichever is sooner, and these trees shall be maintained in good condition and provide a visual and noise buffer to adjacent properties and maintain in that condition in perpetuity. So we want to make sure that they're not put in and taken down or trimmed down years later. Landscaping the existing church surface parking area. So prior to the issuance of any certificate of occupancy for any new senior independent living residential buildings, we'd like to see this implemented of a minimum of 9 additional shade trees planted with the existing church surface parking lot in accordance with the approval of the landscape plan. And trees then need to be maintained at a minimum of a 24-inch box size at the time of planting. So, so we'll go through some very specific landscape guidelines that I've submitted as well. On 10D, I'd like to strike that condition. Just, again, don't find it necessary. So we'll strike out 10D. On 17, for the plan approval and condition of compliance report, I would like to amend that and have it no later than 3 years, rather than the 2 suggested from the date of the issuance of certificate of occupancy for the elementary school. And that the applicant shall file the condition compliance report in accordance with plan approval set forth in the municipal code. And then on 20A and B, we'll retain the conditions as written. I know there was a suggestion from some to take it out, but we'll make sure we maintain those. In terms of additional conditions, we'd like to ask that the applicant annually prepare a master calendar of events listing major church holidays when large attendance is anticipated. The calendar shall be posted to the applicant's website and be submitted to the city planning for the case file, the council office, as well as the neighborhood council, and be provided to the neighbors upon request. The calendar shall include a telephone number established to receive a log and log timely resolved parking complaints and issues. In addition to that, we're going to ask the applicant to post a sign outside that's visible from the sidewalk with the telephone number that's visible for the general public. And the applicant shall provide notices in all newsletters and bulletins issued by the church and school and senior housing, encouraging patron use of the on-site parking. So we want a campaign that's continued to communicate with its members about the parking conditions. So that's what I'd like to see based on all the input from all the neighbors, from the church, as well as planning staff, as modified conditions. And with that, Mr. Chair, if we can now go to public comment. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you. So we'll turn to the applicant and appellant, which is Lee Ambers. You have a total of 5 minutes to speak.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Lee Ambers. I'm here on behalf of the church. I concur, and the church concurs with everything Mr. Englander just read, and we accept all of those conditions either as initiated or modified or deleted. As far as the senior housing, this is the Coptic religion, and they are heavily persecuted in Egypt, and many of them have come here to this country and need housing, need guidance, need direction, and the church offers this to the people. As Mr. O'Donnell said, the church does not provide counseling to these people. Well, these people are ambulatory and they're on campus. So if they have any questions, they go right to the clergy for direction. So that's a fallacy. But with all the turmoil and most recently the discretion or the destruction of the churches in Egypt and the fatalities that have resulted this month alone, let alone what happened before, it is very important that the housing be included. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Not at this time. Thank you. Valerie Collins and Delia Martinez.
Hello, I'm Valerie Collins, but I'm also on the Neighborhood City Council, and at this time I'm speaking for myself, and I think there's a code I need to read to you because I am under code 18704-2A1. I'm speaking for myself because I own property in this area. I live at 17322 Chase Street. Now, I know that you addressed the trees. I know for a fact that these trees, so I have a picture here, but I wasn't sure you were going to speak about that, but they were supposed to leave the eucalyptus trees, and they trimmed them. They trimmed them. We didn't think they were going to live, but they started to live, and when they bloomed up about a month ago, we heard the chainsaws. They took out 28 eucalyptus tree, a whole adult stand. They're gone now. So it leaves out more. And if you look at the first picture, I've showed you a packet. Would you mind looking at your first one? I only have a few minutes left. If that is a 782, it's an historical monument, and there's people living in that. And if you look at the first picture, that is the apartment building over a very, very historical monument that we take pride in taking care of. It's been there since I was a little girl. And that's not right. This is not right to treat our neighborhood that way. We're trying to preserve us.
Thank you. Delia Martinez.
I'm coming here on behalf of my neighbors and my family. We are having a lot of problems with the traffic, them blocking our driveways, and at the same time, we have problems with the fellow ships that come out of there. They're always parking where they're not supposed to. They are rude to the community, and we're afraid that by adding the apartments with the school, it would impact our traffic more than what it has already have done for our lives. We are really a quiet neighborhood once they're not around by just parking around our area. So please, we ask that you don't let this go by no more further, because we are really in a lot of need of peace and quiet by our house. So I have provided some literature there and some pictures where there are people crossing on Roscoe, and they are really addressing the issue where they have been not complying with since '93. So if you could check all that, please, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Very
you.
much.
Okay, so with that, thank you very much, and that's what we've been hearing for a number of years, which is why I've added all the parking provisions, conditions, because they're critical. It has to be done. And so with that, and I want to thank the community for coming out here, I'd like to ask this committee then for action to approve the appeal in part and deny in part. Instruct the planning to prepare appropriate conditions and findings to permit the additional requested senior housing, and that these attached to the file prior to them moving to council. There are also the list of modified and added conditions that have been circulated that I went into detail on. I didn't read them in whole, but in part, but they've been circulated and incorporated into the final. We'd like them incorporated into the final determination, particularly to protect the community and the neighbors as they stressed as well.
Thank you. It's been a motion made by Mr. Englander. Second that. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, so ordered. Very much. Okay. Item number 7.
Did you say 7? Okay. Item 7, Councilman, is an appeal, 2 appeals rather, one by Sunset Landmark Investment and the second one by Unite Here Local 11. This is a mixed-use project with 212 hotel rooms in CD13, the Tommy Hotel.
Welcome to our staff.
Good afternoon. Macer Noscon with City Planning, project planner for the case that's before you today. It's for a project site located at 6516 to 6526 West Selma Avenue within the Hollywood Community Plan. The proposed project is the construction of an 8-story, approximately 90-foot tall mixed-use building consisting of 212 guest room hotels with guest amenities and ground floor and rooftop bar and lounges. The project proposes to provide 205 parking spaces that will be located within 4 subterranean parking levels. At its meeting on January 26, 2017, the City Planning Commission approved and recommended the adoption of a vesting zone change and height district change to TQC2-2D, a conditional use for alcohol sales and site plan review. The action was subsequently appealed by 2 parties, Unite Here Local 11 and the Sunset Landmark Investment LLC. Appeal points specific to Unite Here's appeal are related to the analysis of the project impacts on greenhouse gases, sensitive uses in the area, as well as noise. Appeal point specific to Sunset Landmark Investments appeal is related to the interpretation of the permitted density within the R5 zone. And then an appeal point raised by both appellants is in regards to the delimitation and CRA's authority over the development of the site. In regards to the analysis of the MND, the MND analyzes and evaluates the impact of greenhouse gases consistent with AB 32, and additionally, the project will be required to comply with Green Building Code, which consists of local regulations that were established specifically to provide consistency at the local level to meet the statewide goals to reduce greenhouse gases. In regards to the sensitive uses, the MND analyzes the impacts of the project on adjacent uses as well as the school within the appropriate categories in the MND, and determined that with the existing regulatory measures, the project's impact would be less than significant. This is the same conclusion that was made based on a noise study that was prepared for the project. In regards to the appeal point regarding density, the project is a proposed mixed-use building, which will not only serve the hotel, but also provide public access to restaurant uses on the site. The zoning code permits R5 uses as well as the density within the commercially zoned properties for mixed-use projects, and the R5 zone does not have a density limitation in regards to guest rooms. Rather, it's limited by the total floor area that's permitted on the site. In regards to the development limitations and the CRA's authority over the project site, the appellants failed to note that the delimitation was already changed in 2008, and the project is no longer subject to the floor area restrictions and the requirements for a disposition and development agreement with CRA. While the site is located within the boundaries of the CRA Hollywood Redevelopment Agency, it is no longer subject to the review and approval of the CRA for those purposes. Additionally, I would like to conclude that the department has submitted a technical modification dated April 19, 2017 that was circulated earlier to modify 2 typographical errors as well as to include a condition of approval regarding the haul route in response to a letter submitted by LAUSD dated March 31st, 2017. And with that, staff recommends the denial of the appeals and to sustain the decision of the City Planning Commission. I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Okay, we will now turn to public comment. Your first appellant is Daniel Wright.
How much time will I be allowed?
5 minutes.
I'll enter my objection now to that. Daniel Wright of the Silverstein Law Firm on behalf of appellant Sunset Landmark Investments. Let the record reflect that the appellant has submitted to the record an extensively documented letter and supported with 8 exhibits, all based upon further investigation of this project and the MND. You have before you a copy of the letter. Despite what you may hear today from the usual Hollywood project supporters, the Tommy Hotel is an overdense, noise-generating nuisance project, a party hotel with more than twice the residential density authorized by law, nearly twice the FAR authorized by enforceable mitigation measures of the Hollywood General Plan Zoning Consistency Program, and with an MND that fails to properly address air quality, land use, greenhouse gases, cumulative traffic impacts, and more. First of all, out of the starting gate, Municipal Code Section 1605G mandates that the CRA be the lead agency, which the city has usurped that role by doing it itself. You'll hear from staff and others that, well, the agencies are allowed under CEQA to agree to who the lead agency is. The only problem with that is that an agreement has already been struck and it's enacted into law. 16.05G represents that agreement that the redevelopment agency is the king decider in the redevelopment area because it is most familiar with the planning priorities and the activities of implementing the plan, the redevelopment plan in those areas. Why the city has started taking over is not clear. Of course, we understand that CRA redevelopment agencies are winding down. But until the law is changed, the law is the law. With regard to air quality, our expert identified that in an appendix of this project, there will be 322 diesel, heavy-duty truck trips exposing sensitive receptors in the area, including school children, to diesel emissions. This MND has no analysis whatsoever about the human effects of those impacts. It only analyzes the traffic impacts, and that is a serious deficiency under CEQA. In addition, the greenhouse gas standard articulated in the MND is literally an unadopted standard that's never been endorsed by South Coast Air Quality Management District. And in fact, the last time that the working group that discussed this particular standard that's been used in this environmental document was 2010, about 7 years ago. That is not an adequate or appropriate way to analyze greenhouse gases. With regard to cumulative traffic impacts, our traffic expert identified that there are cumulative impacts and that the technique used in the analysis and the MND is to mask it by essentially keeping the Tommy Hotel out of the analysis and sort of essentially shifting the blame for cumulative impacts to all the other 139 related projects in the area. If every one of those 139 projects in the area was able to do what they did in this MND, then essentially you'd have everyone pointing fingers at everyone else, and no one would be responsible for the cumulative impacts. That is not an appropriate analysis and is deficient under CEQA as well. In addition, there are significant impacts with regard to land use here that are being masked and ignored. As has been an unfortunate habit of the planning department, actually an embarrassment from the standpoint of good planning practice, is that this city does not disclose in its project descriptions and in its land use sections what would be the zoning or permitted residential density, FAR, and other kind of basic concepts about a project. It's not disclosed or discussed in your project description. That's true here. And also in the land use section, all of the history with respect to these FAR limits that were imposed in 1988. Your staff tries to say that an action in 2008 changed that, but those entitlements have expired, and under your own law, those are now void, and that ordinance needs to be repealed. So as a result, those density limits do apply, and for all of these reasons, you should send this project not back to your staff, but back to the proper lead agency, and that would be CRA-LA. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second appellant, Gideon Krakow.
Chair Weezar, members Cedillo, Englander, Harris Dawson, Price. What a pleasure it is to address you in this beautiful room today. My name is Gideon Krakow. I'm an environmental and land use lawyer for the appellant, Unite Here, Local 11, and LA City residents Lauren Farmer, Robert Mazariegos, Liliana Hernandez, and Francis Engler. Unite Here, on behalf of its thousands of members in our city, opposes this project. As we build out our city, as we grant special land use changes and exceptions, like for this project, HERE Local 11 is a stakeholder. Its members, many of whom are here today, want a Los Angeles where they can work with fair wages and benefits and where they can afford to live. As we take land that could be residential, like this project amidst a housing crisis, and use it for boutique hotels, Unite Here is opposed unless such projects truly benefit the community. And does this project satisfy this standard? This project does not. To begin, of course, the project is not by right. It seeks a zone change, CUP, a tract map, special zoning entitlements. Therefore, findings are required to support the general welfare, to promote economic well-being, and to show good zoning practice. Council members, you have the discretion to say no unless those special findings can be made here. Next, you must accept a mitigated negative declaration for this project under the California Environmental Quality Act, as opposed to a more full-blown, comprehensive environmental impact report, or EIR. This means the fair argument standard applies. That's a low threshold, council members, favoring more, not less, environmental review. In our appeal and those of the other appellant, we have expert testimony on these issues. We provided to you an additional letter today. For example, in our letter, supported by expert testimony, discusses the project's greenhouse gas assumptions and its failure to include any special feasible mitigations for greenhouse gases. This violates CEQA and the low fair argument standard. And I know a lot about this greenhouse gas issue, currently litigating it in the Court of Appeal. When you take a parking lot and build 212 hotel rooms on top of it, like this project, you must properly analyze the impacts of that change. And my clients respectfully insist that this be done right. Otherwise, please deny this project. This is not some by right adaptive reuse project. It's all brand new. And the greenhouse gas thresholds discussed in our letter and used here by the applicant are literally made up, completely lacking substantial evidence. In addition, we also support the land use comments of the other appellant in consistency with the Hollywood Community Plan, the Hollywood Redevelopment Plan, the failure to follow the applicable, even if old, planning obligations from the CRA. So fundamentally, the question for you, council members, is whether the land use findings on the general welfare, the economic well-being, can be made for this project, and whether the shortcut MND is appropriate. You have the discretion, indeed the obligation, to do a searching review of these issues, and we know you will, and to send this project back unless these findings are warranted. Local 11 and its members who make this city function with their hard work, and LA residents Lauren Farmer, Robert Mazariegos, Liliana Hernandez, and Francis Engler say no, that these findings cannot be made for this project based on the whole record before you. They oppose this project, and they urge you to grant the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Now for the applicant rep, we have two cards, Alfred Fraijo and Kira Tashima. I'm not sure how you want to split there's two representatives?
I'll go ahead and speak, Chair, and then if we need additional time, I'm happy to have my colleague present as well.
Okay.
Honorable Chair, council members, I'm here to urge your support of the Tommy Hotel. And first I want to start off by thanking staff, in particular the planning staff that has worked with us for a number of years now in connection with our application. I also want to thank Council 13, CD 13 for their efforts in working with us and helping us also coordinate our outreach to numerous stakeholder groups throughout Hollywood that have made this project, I believe, much stronger. Let's start with the fundamental premise here. We have an existing approved project. That project consisted of a 50-unit commercial office condo. What you have before you today is essentially a modification to that previously approved project. If I could digress for a second with regards to the objections that were raised, I want to just state for the record that all those objections concern the kinds of issues that should have been raised at the onset of that original project. However, for whatever reason, those arguments failed to gain any traction, failed to be raised in any material way, and that project was approved without objection, and no challenge was issued for that project. What you have here is a modification of that project consisting with the underlying zoning to build a hotel that will further support the growth and renaissance of Hollywood. It's a 212-room hotel with amenity space on the ground floor as well as a rooftop. Over the past 2 years, the applicant has worked tirelessly to outreach to community stakeholder groups for purposes of trying to improve that project, and I think we've achieved that. We've submitted a letter articulating modifications, voluntary modifications to the conditions of approval, as were indicated by staff, that I believe, as I mentioned earlier, not only benefit the neighborhood, but also strengthen the qualifications relative to the substantiated analysis in our mitigated negative declaration. The community is supportive of our project. We've done outreach to the Central Hollywood Neighborhood Council. They've submitted a letter of support, as has the larger board, as has the Hollywood Network Coalition, as has the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, and we have many representatives from the neighborhood here to speak in support of the project. I would add that the group of supporters also include the Los Angeles Police Department, as well as our neighbors immediately adjacent to our project. I also want to add in relation to the larger benefits that were articulated by the appellants, in particular the issue around labor. Our applicant and our client is not new to Hollywood, is not new to Los Angeles. They have over 20 years of investing in the growth of Hollywood, and they have also a track record of partnering with labor groups, hiring union labor, doing local hiring, doing job training efforts as part of their hospitality expansion in Hollywood. And so when I say that this project is not only supported by the neighborhoods, but will do good for the neighborhood, it definitely is supported by precedent. I also want to articulate some issues related to the M&D. As was mentioned, we have spent over 2 years working with staff. A part of that work included a preparation of a mitigated negative declaration, which include qualified analysis by experts identified by the city as a lead agency in full compliance of CEQA. We have introduced substantial evidence supporting the fair argument that the project does not cause any significant impacts to the environment. The comments that have been presented by the appellants, frankly, do not constitute any substantial evidence that would rebut the analysis and conclusions in our document. Let me also state that under CEQA, as the appellants are fully aware, even with expert opinion presented, the city has the benefit of the doubt relative to the conclusions of the document, and I believe we've done not only an adequate but an extraordinary amount of analysis that support those conclusions. And frankly, the arguments that are raised by the appellants are rather policy arguments in relation to how the city manages some of its zoning issues, and I would ask them that they reserve those kinds of arguments for later time and perhaps for more general policy discussion and not specific to this project. They raised issues related to GHG. They raised issues related to traffic and noise, and frankly, other than killing a number of trees to produce a voluminous set of filings that were produced today, none of that material really constitutes substantial evidence that merits further review by the city or planning staff. We urge you again to support the project, to recommend approval to the full council as soon as possible. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Kira Tashima, if you wish to speak, you have 1 minute. Do you still wish to speak?
Chair, if we could just reserve that time for rebuttal as necessary in your discretion. Thank you.
Gilbert Smith, Scott Campbell, Nicole Shahanian.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Gilbert Smith. I am chair of the Ricardo Montalban Foundation, the owner and operator of the Ricardo Montalban Theater in Hollywood. And I'm here to give testimony in support of the Tommy Hotel project. I want to start with a quote about design. Design is not what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. And this is a quote from Steve Jobs. Grant King and Richard Heyman, community builders with local roots. They're smart developers with great designs that work. The Tommy will be within walking distance of Hollywood Boulevard, the ArcLight Cinemas, on Sunset, the new Columbia Square, along with numerous restaurants and businesses. The increases in hospitality, with numerous desires from all of our stakeholders, will be a benefit to visitors that will make Hollywood a destination as opposed to a bus stop looking for a place for the stars. Anyway,
thank you.
The Tommy Hotel is dynamic and will help us bring more audiences to our theaters, and we will benefit from that project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Scott Campbell.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. My name is Scott Campbell. I'm president of Hollywood Network Coalition, a broad-based coalition of Hollywood residents, businesses, educational institutions, and nonprofits. As Alfred said earlier, this project was previously approved, and when it was, I was chairman of Central Hollywood Neighborhood Council for the prior project. One of the reasons we support this project as the Hollywood Network Coalition is that it's consistent with the hospitality that's going in the area. It's the same building envelope as the original project that was approved, has larger open space, maintains parking for the Citizen News historic building next door, and has no live entertainment on the roof. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Shahinian, Casey Madron, and Pastor Q. Marie. Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Nicole Shahanian with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to express our support for the proposed Tommy Hotel. The area proposed for this hotel is an area in transition into an entertainment zone with the adjacent Mama's Shelter Hotel and Dream Hotel, as well as 2 nearby hotels proposed. As an infill project, this hotel will repurpose an existing parking lot, helping to create vitality in the neighborhood, bringing both temporary and permanent jobs and bolstering the activity for businesses in the vicinity. The proposed mix of hotel guest rooms, outdoor and indoor amenities meets the immediate need for hotel rooms, quality dining, and entertainment establishments in Hollywood. The beautifully landscaped Paseo and courtyard on the eastern boundary of the project is a brilliant nod to the alleys and hidden oases of Old Hollywood. The Hollywood Chamber is particularly excited to see the Selma and Cahuenga corridors emerging as the center of hospitality for the thousands of visitors that travel to Hollywood, as well as our local residents who live, work, and play in Hollywood. The Hollywood Chamber encourages you to move forward with this important project. Thank you.
Thank you. Casey?
Hi, my name is Casey Madron. I'm a Hollywood resident. The M&D for this project is seriously inadequate. In the surrounding uses section, while it mentions the Capitol Records Building, the Egyptian Theater, and the Palladium, it fails to mention an elementary school, Selma Avenue Elementary, less than 500 feet away from the project. It also fails to properly analyze operational impacts in terms of noise and traffic to the elementary school, and construction impacts in terms of auto emissions and noise impacts for construction. If the council approves this project, it will go to court. If it goes to court, it will get media attention. And what I'm hoping is that I can see on camera the members of the council explaining to the parents of teachers of Selma Avenue Elementary why they were never consulted prior to the approval of this project.
Thank you. Pastor Q, Doug Haynes, Kira Tashima, and Chris Robertson from Council District 13. Welcome.
Pastor Q, Jean Marie, I'm here representing CLU Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. I oppose this project, or any project that will not be a source of good jobs and good careers for folks in our community. Oftentimes, we displace residents from the very same community in which we attempted to do business. This is the reason why we have a horrible homeless problem, not just in Hollywood, but all over the county of Los Angeles. We have a serious issue in the hospitality industry with diversity. Will this developer be willing to address that? Apparently not, because they haven't been willing to sign an agreement with the community. If a development chooses to ignore these issues, then this is an indication that it is more about the developers rather than the community, what the developers can get. I'm reminded of a story in the Bible where there was a woman who gave out of her lack, and Jesus said she gave more than those who gave out of their abundance. So does this developer, are they willing to give out of the abundance for a community that's already hurting?
Okay, Doug Haynes, and then Kira Tashima. Okay. Either one.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name's Doug Haynes. Just real quick, I wanted to bring up an issue I brought up before, and I have an unfortunate feeling I'll be bringing up again later, and that's all through the number of years and meetings that we had on the Hollywood Community Plan update, this area west of Vine Street was specifically called out by this very same planning department to retain the low FAR in order to maintain the historic street context of this area. And unfortunately, that's being ignored. It was ignored also for the Wilcox Hotel. The reason it was specifically limited was after all those meetings we had, and there were approximately 175, the community wanted to maintain, and the CRA wanted to maintain the low-scale nature of this area, and the infrastructure could not maintain anything greater than that. So I would appreciate it if CD13 and everyone else would try to respect that and not come back with all these projects that ignore that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kira?
Hi, this is Kira Tashima, Shepherd Mullen attorney, applicant representative. I just wanted to address 2 points. The first made by Mr. Madron. The Selma Elementary School was adequately analyzed and identified in the mitigated negative declaration. The planning department submitted a technical corrections letter to the committee in which it added an additional condition of approval that required construction notification to the school. So there will be active coordination and communication between the applicant and Selma Elementary School. The second point, to address Mr. Haynes' comment regarding the density proposed for the project. This project site is actually designated by the general plan as Regional Center Commercial, which, as you know, is allowed the additional density under the Hollywood redevelopment plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Robertson from Council District 13.
Good afternoon, council members. Chris Robertson, Planning Director for Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell of the 13th District. We're here today to express our support for the proposed project. As you've heard earlier, City Council approved a zone change for the site and the same building envelope back in 2008 for 50 office condominium units. So this is essentially a technical change to allow a much-needed use that's better suited to Selma Avenue, resulting in less traffic and an overall better project. It will also contribute to the revitalization of the Selma Avenue corridor, of which the applicant has been a major part, demonstrating a commitment to make this community a more active, safer, and friendly place to live, work, and do business. We would like to commend the applicant for working closely with our office, LAPD, the Neighborhood Council, and the community at large. This has been an excellent example of a collaborative and balanced approach to growth. As the project moves forward, we look forward to working closely with the applicant and other major stakeholders in the community to develop local hire, training, and ensure quality craftsmanship. The department has submitted modified conditions. The applicant has also submitted a number of condition modifications they're requesting. We support both, and so we ask for your support with the inclusion of the 2 sets of conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this? To our staff, there was an issue raised about consistency with our community plan. This community plan in particular has gone through some changes these last few years. There's been a zone change. How does that fit with the consistency argument?
May with City Planning, you're correct in terms of the Hollywood Community Plan designates this area for a regional center. Back in 2008, there was a new project that was proposed. They went through also a zone change and height district change. The zone change was essentially C4. They didn't change the zoning. It really was in effect to change the delimitation, which, as has been mentioned, is in regards to the FAR from CRA. Yeah. And essentially in 2008, that was changed to allow a 3.5 FAR. A comment that was made by one of the appellants in terms of the life of that change, I'd just like to point out that the only thing that expires are the tentative and qualified conditions to the zone change. Those are project-specific conditions. The delimitation that talks about the FAR and the permitted height, they do not expire pursuant to LAMC section 1232G 4D. It states that development limitations do not expire with the expiration of T's and Q's. And so therefore the project site, those delimitations are still in effect, and the change that this height district change is going from is from 3.5 to 3.83. And so in that sense, the project and the zoning that's being recommended is still is consistent with the Hollywood development.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll move that we adopt the vesting zone and height district change, that we deny the appeals, and sustain the entire determination of the CPC in approving a conditional use permit for the sale and dispensing of a full line of alcohol for on-site consumption, site plan review, and M&D at this location, but also incorporate the amendments by the applicant and the technical modifications from the planning department. Those have been submitted for the record, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any objections? Seeing none, so second, Mr. Harris-Dawson. Any objections? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Okay, and items 8 and 9 we will take together. If you could read those into the record, please.
Sure. Item 8 and 9, Councilman. Item 8 relates to the appeal on the vesting track map for a 75-unit condo project in CD7. The appellant is Charles Johnson. And item 9 relates to the other underlying entitlements, so general plan amendment, the zone change, the site plan review, and the building line removal.
Great, thank you. Staff, we heard this item, I believe, or we had it here a few weeks ago.
Yes. Good afternoon, council members, chairman of the committee, Nelson Rodriguez, Valley District Office Planner. Yes, we were here on March 28th, and the Planning and Land Use Management Committee heard the project and the applicant's testimony that the project features were changed from City Planning Commission recommended action dated December 21st, 2016 to address the issues raised by the surrounding single-family neighborhood. Plum, at that meeting, then directed the Department of City Planning to review the modified project submitted by the applicant on March 28, 2017, and make any recommendations as necessary for Plum reconsideration at this scheduled public hearing. So the Department of City Planning was able to review the modified project, a 75-unit multifamily comprised of a 54-unit apartment building over the existing R3-1 portion of the site fronting Sepulveda Boulevard, having an existing land use designation of medium, and the remainder L-shaped portion of the site to consist of a 21-unit detached residential condominium project over the proposed low medium 2 land use designation and the proposed (T) (Q) RD 1.5-1 zone. The revised Q conditions limits the use to a 21-unit detached residential condominium development and a 54-unit at-grade level apartment. The detached units will be standalone with spacing similar to what one might find in a traditional single-family residential project. The prior project consisted of 15 separate detached buildings housing 4 to 6 units each. The elevations to the detached condominiums are now redesigned to resemble a single-family dwelling. The proposed 21 units is similar to a density typical of the RD4 zone, or a little over 4,000 square feet per acre. The revised environmental CEQA, ENV-2015-4183-MND, was reviewed and analyzed by staff for the modified project, and staff determined that the newly revised project does not create any new impacts beyond what has already been analyzed by the revised adopted MND. As such, this environmental does not require recirculation or subsequent analysis to the revised map. Staff did receive copies of the revised vesting tentative map 73939-CN. It is date stamped March 28, 2017 to reflect the revised project. Staff redistributed that maps to the city agencies for their review and comment, and staff will prepare a track map modification once all of the agency comments are received so that the map conditions are consistent with any action taken by this committee. In conclusion, the following letter that staff prepared on April 14, 2017, which you guys have before you, are the proposed changes to the City Planning Commission action dated December 21st, 2016. As required for the record, the changes are identified as strikeouts for text to be removed and underlined for text to be added as shown below. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Charles Johnson, the appellant.
Good afternoon, council members, Chair Huizar. In going over the recommendations of the City Planning Department, I noticed that none of the wants and needs of the 225 homeowners and tenants who live in the area who have signed the petitions have been considered, except the R3 zone facing Sepulveda Boulevard, and it didn't need to be changed. In 2006, Emily Gable Liddy said that changing the zone in there to RS or R1 would set a precedent for this future. No property on the block face or across the street have been rezoned to a higher density. Further properties to the west in the next block at 15600 Plummer and Orion have been rezoned to RS1, 7,500 square feet per lot. The subject property at the time is located at 15508 West Plummer Street, and we feel that the zone should be consistent with the property in the next block. We have been making it clear in every meeting with Williams Homes, and now we see lots offered that most of them are 2,432 square feet lots. Having 7,500 square foot lots is a long way from the minimum 1/2 acre and will provide a desirable precedent for the future, and we will not have to go over this each time a contractor wants to build a tract home in our area. When we approved the 21 houses, we thought they would be consistent with the zoning and size of lots that have set a precedent in the past. The way the plan was drawn, it appeared the property is larger than it actually is. Also, the project summary is misleading, as saying there are 10 houses per acre. In reality, on the 7/8 of an acre of land, there's 7. And on the other 1¼ acres of land, there are 14 homes. Upon examining the proposal from the Planning Department, we find this zoning has been changed from RA1 to TQ RD1.5-1. These lots that are not even 3,000 square feet, and they refer to them as detached residential condominiums, which we find offensive since we have been arguing against condominiums being built in our community from August 2016, when we first learned of this project. We asked you to save our neighborhood and have the contractor build on no smaller than RS1, 7,500 square foot lots. Just a quarter mile west, the contractor on Tupper is building large 2-story homes on R1 lots and selling them as a profit. If you cannot honor our proposal, we respectfully request a continuancy until we can elect our own council member for District 7 and have him or her seated as we can be properly represented. As you probably know, Williams Homes was working on this project since August 2015 and didn't inform the surrounding property owners until August 2016, 1 year. And if they had notified us when they started the project, we would have probably saved them a lot of time.
Okay. Thank you. Now we'll hear from the applicant, Scott Owlett or Scott Smith.
Hi, Honorable Chairman and City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to present to you today our revised project. Let me give you a little bit of history. This was continued from March 28th. What we're attempting to do is assemble 2 properties here. Each of them are underutilized parcels. One is a dilapidated school that's been vandalized and is burned out and is a public nuisance. The other one is a former nursery that also contains a functionally obsolete house. There's two separate owners. We originally embarked on this project over 2 years ago and attempted to bring forward a project the community would support. So we originally proposed 75 units in total. 56 units can be built by right in the R3 zoned area that's on the parcel on Sepulveda Boulevard. But what we did is we asked for 75 units and distributed the density throughout the property. Originally, we had support from CD7 and the neighborhood council. They did not want any rental, and that's why we proposed a 75-unit condominium project. But of course, the tide can change in neighborhood councils and within council district, depending on who's pushing forward their own agenda and who has the loudest voice at the time. So ultimately, we put forth a 75-unit project. It was approved at the advisory agency. An appeal was filed. We made some concessions and went to Planning Commission. Some concessions were made there based upon input from the appellant, and the project was approved at Planning Commission, and there was another appeal filed. So what we did is we sat down with Council District 7, Council District 10, with the appellant and other members of the community, and we basically gave them the exact project they asked for. They were okay with 75 units. They asked that the density be pushed to the Sepulveda parcel, and we proposed originally 24 units on the remainder L-shaped portion of the property. We were asked to reduce 24 units down to 22 units, which we agreed to without negotiation. Then we were asked to remove one more unit along the existing houses, which we agreed to without negotiation. And that is the plan that you have before you. We thought this plan was all agreed to with the appellant and with other members of the community. All along the way, all the plans that we presented, all the drawings we presented, they were full-scale drawing prepared by civil engineers and architectural professionals. So there was no attempt to, pull anything over in anyone's eyes or misrepresent the size of the lots that we were preparing. The single-family detached condos will live like single-family homes. They have generous side yard setbacks, so they'll look very similar to an R1 neighborhood. They'll, of course, have smaller yards. They will have private yards established by exclusive use common areas. The apartment building that's being proposed on Sepulveda, we've made every effort to make the design of that building completely consistent with R3-1 zoning requirements. So the height, the density, the parking, everything is compliant with R3-1 zoning. In addition to it, at the request of the community, we changed the architecture on the single-family detached homes. We made it more traditional architecture. We took off the rooftop decks and made other changes they requested. Each of the single-family detached condos, I know there was a lot of animosity over the word condominium, but as it was when we were meeting with members of the community, the objection was more over large-scale multifamily buildings. The detached condos we're proposing are just one dwelling unit per building. With all that, I would like to thank staff. Nelson Rodriguez and his staff have been absolutely fantastic to work with in helping us rework this project in a way that still works for us and that also satisfied the request from the community. So with that, I'd like to thank you, and myself and Scott Smith will remain available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Jill Akahoshi, Dave Jacoby, Jordan Barokim from CD10.
Committee. Let's see. So with the help of Andrew Westall from Council President Herb Weston's office, we negotiated in good faith with the developer regarding the above, this is part of my email that I wrote to you, regarding this case. We were under the impression that we would see a draft of the revisions to the project to review before they were submitted to city planning and to you as well. So we did not receive that draft. We were only notified once the revisions were placed on the council file. So upon reading the revisions made and submitted, the community now objects to the rezone, allowing the condominiums to be built. During the discussion with Williams, the phrase detached condominium or the word condominium was never used or, am I done? Oh, thank you.
Your time is
was
up,
never
ma'am.
used or brought up, and the neighbors would have never supported the project as it's being presented to you now, had that been said, because all that they were saying the whole time was single lot, small lot family homes or single family homes, and they never once mentioned it. And detached condominium is placed all over the document now. Sorry, thank you.
Dave Jacoby.
Good afternoon, council members. My wife and I are long and proud owners of the house at 9538 Langdon Avenue, which is in view of the proposed project. Our family has owned the house since 1953, 64 years. Since the inception of the proposed project, we have not been afforded the representation necessary to address the issues with the project. I'm specifically referring to the lack of elected city council member to represent our district. The builder is apparently proposing condominiums, which were never agreed to by the affected homeowners. I am of the opinion that in order to address the homeowners' concerns, we need a continuance for 6 months so that a city council member for District 7 is in place to assist in moving forward in a positive manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jordan Barrowcam from Council District 10.
Good afternoon, members of the Plum Committee. Jordan Baruchim from Council President Weston's office. I'd like to thank everyone that's here today. I mean, this really has been a collaborative effort between members of the community, DCP, CD7, CD10, and Williams Homes. We do ask that you appeal in part, I apologize, to approve in part and deny in part items 8 and 9. We do ask that, if possible, we keep everything here in Plum and only send back the GPA portion back to CPC. The only part we ask that if we could please move forward, if we could just move forward with the time extensions for the 90 days, which I believe the applicant is agreeable to. Just wanted to quickly add, I mean, even though our code defines this as detached condominiums, the overall look and design is really to achieve the feel of a single-family home, and I think that's what Williams Home has been trying to achieve. So I'm hoping that in the time it takes to take the item back to CPC and come back, maybe it's more of an opportunity for the neighbors to familiarize themselves with the plans and the drawings. But other than that, I mean, I'm here to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we want to thank Council District 10 for working on the modifications for this project. And I got the sense that from the last time we heard this that some of the, not all, but some of the local committee members' concerns have been addressed. And with that, we'll take the recommendation of Council District 10. And on item number 8, we will move to grant in part and deny in part the appeal. Recommend that council adopt the revised tract map, extend the time limit for 90 days, and refer the matter back to Plum for reconsideration. And item number 9, grant in part and deny in part the appeal. Instruct planning to prepare a new zone change ordinance, modify the site plan review, and present modified findings and conditions as necessary. Refer the GPA back to CPC, extend time limit for 90 days, refer the matter back to Plum for reconsideration, and improve the M&D and mitigation measures and mitigation monitoring program. Any objections to that motion? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Our final item for today is item 10, and then we have public comment after that.
Item 10, Councilman, this is an appeal by Robert Cashfian. He's appealing the action of the Board of Building and Safety Commissioners as it relates to a haul route to export 3,778 cubic yards of earth from vacant land and the construction of a new single-family dwelling in CD5.
Thank you. Welcome. On these items, if you could just do a quick overview, don't need to go too much into detail, but we've got the reports before us.
Okay.
So just a quick overview from staff
Sure.
will be great.
Sure. The original appeal was, the haul route was heard on February 14th. There were 2 issues raised about the staging and how the trucks were actually going to be loaded. So we continued that item until March 21st. On March 21st, the hearing was held, and the board approved the haul route with conditions. They added the Bel Air rules and the staging. So, and the CEQA, the categorical exemption was also accepted.
Okay, great. Thank you. We will now go to the appellant, Robert Cashfian.
Thank you. Members of the council, thank you for your time today. I wanted to point out a couple of things in the appeal. I know you guys have gotten briefings or have received our appeal documents, none of which the committee has actually addressed with regards to the failure to notify the surrounding neighbors of the approved haul route. The original haul route was completely different than the approved haul route, so there are no additions. So we are making an appeal based on the fact that there is no proper notice of this approved haul route. The second issue is that this haul route trespasses on private property, which has also not been addressed. And the earth underneath the new haul route, as you can see in the pictures that are in the appeal, also are under soil which have utilities and there's no report done on the soil that can carry these heavy trucks. You're going to hear testimony today from people that are not on the proper side of Roca Place, which is the route of the haul route. They're on the south side. The north side of the haul route has 4 residents that are going to be affected. And the party that has requested the modification and the appeal to the Bel Air Association, which is not a governing body, both have supported a haul route that's different without taking into consideration any of these factors that I've mentioned. So the testimony you're going to hear today is going to be entirely irrelevant, and they don't address the points that I've talked about. The council member's office I just spoke to also confirmed that they're just going with what they're saying. So I've informed him of the issues that I've brought to you today. So I think that there's a failure of finding a fact with regards to these specific issues that I'm talking about, and they haven't been addressed since the appeal has been filed. They were not addressed at the hearing. So the biggest issue is also the elevation. There's a big risk of safety with regards to these trucks speeding down a hill where the elevation is higher from where the exit of the property is, and that is a safety risk that wasn't taken into consideration either. The biggest issue, another issue that we have is that this was a premature finding. There was no grading permit, and the applicant is actually using a route or a private driveway of another house by way of an easement. That also is improper, and since there's an easement, it crosses on my client's property, which is also my own residence that I live there too. So I'm here as an attorney, but I'm also a resident, and I can tell you that none of the people who are going to speak today or have submitted evidence are even touching on the issues that I'm talking about. Neither is the community. None of the 4 houses in the picture that you have in front of you where the haul route passes are members of the Bel Air Association. So the testimony and the support that they've gotten for this haul route is not entirely based on any substantive issues that I've talked about. I'm not here today to deny the haul route. I'm not asking deny the haul route outright and all that. The issue that we're having is the original haul route was proper. There's no evidence why it was improper. It doesn't inconvenience anyone. this new haul route inconveniences 4 residents, none of which are going to be here today to just talk to you, or none of which are represented by the Bel Air Association. And that's a big point. And I urge this committee to make a recommendation to either amend this haul route to the original haul route or deny it outright so that further investigation can be made with regards to the soil or the compaction underneath where my clients' power lines are running. To have heavy trucks run over power lines and power meters, utility lines, just because the people across the street don't want to see the trucks come in front of them is not sufficient for in consideration of the issues at hand. And that is how we are posturing this appeal, and I believe that those points that we have mentioned have not been raised, and I'd like the record to reflect that we have submitted images with maps and drawings showing the haul route, the old one and the new one, which we didn't get notice of. And that is the basis for our appeal. And with that, we submit, and we ask the board to make a recommendation to deny the haul route and grant our appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The appellant, Larry G. Ray, or Gray.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Larry Gray, Spindler Engineering. We're the civil engineers on this particular project. And the testimony here and the appeal that was filed.
I'm sorry, before you go on, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Before you go on, Derek Yee, the actual owner, applicant, also submitted a card, but you will take the 5-minute allotment, and then the actual owner will take the 1 minute? Is that?
Well, we had, there was 2 possible haul routes. One was much more
I guess so.
objectionable by some of the homeowners because it meant that we had to load trucks on the public street, whereas here we can drive trucks directly onto the existing level pad. Trucks are not going to be backing down the driveway. They can turn around on the pad. I think the Building and Safety Board, I think, was very correct in the way they handled the hearing, because our first hearing, they postponed for a number of weeks so that the staff could go and actually take a look at the project and decide which would be the better route for hauling the dirt. And thereafter, the staff did indeed pick the route that we felt was more preferable, whereby we didn't have to drop the dirt down an 80-foot hill onto trucks that would be parked in the turnaround of Roca Place. So that is why we picked the haul route we did. The amount of dirt being hauled is just a little over half of the amount of dirt that is allowed under the interim control ordinance, which of course now has changed. The property that the driveway that we are that we will be using for the haul route is not unstable. We have an approved soils and geology report from the Department of Building and Safety. We have a grading plan in plan check. Unlike testimony that you heard, the Building and Safety Department does not issue permits that require a haul route before the haul route has been approved. The holdup we have on getting the haul route approved, of course, the grading permit is the haul route. So as soon as it's approved, then we can obtain the grading permit. This is a relatively small home by the standards in that neighborhood, around 10,000 square feet. It's on a pad that is mostly level. We have plenty of turnaround room. Like I said, the staff from Building and Safety have walked the property, have seen it. I know one of the neighbors had a concern that there was a water vault in a little stub street called Roca Court that might be damaged. I checked with the Department of Water and Power. Jesus Gonzalez, who's the engineer for water and power of that area, and he confirmed that that vault was a regular traffic-loaded vault, just like they put in public streets, highways, and so on. So it's unlikely there would be any problem with that. We feel this is a much less disruptive route for hauling the dirt than the one that was originally proposed. The Building and Safety Board agreed with that, and we ask for your approval. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Not at this moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Derek Yee, 1 minute.
Hello, Derek Yee, Law Office of Derek Yee. Just wanted to state my appearance on behalf of the homeowner, well, soon-to-be homeowner, right now property owner, Giant Fame, and just want to state their opposition to the appeal and request that their engineer's application be upheld, approval be upheld. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie T. Hall.
Hello, my name is Jamie Hall. I'm an attorney with Channel Law Group. I represent the neighbor across the street, Cynthia Yorkin, who lives at 10500 Roca Place. When the hearing was continued, we actually met with Councilman Koretz's office, the applicant's engineer. We walked the site, and we determined that the haul route that was ultimately proposed was the better of the two options for many of the reasons that the engineer stated. Primarily, it's safer. It's simply not safe to park trucks in the turnaround. There are homes at the end of Roca Place that would be blocked, and emergency service vehicles could not access those homes if a truck was in the loading process. And so the Bel Air Association is also against this appeal, and I want you to know that. And finally, I just want to note that perfection is not attainable here. So we're talking about two different haul routes. The one that was ultimately chosen by the board is the better of the two haul routes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, someone here from Council District 5?
Council members, good afternoon. Faisal Sir on behalf of Councilmember Koretz. I think Jamie stated this perfectly. There would not have been a perfect solution here. The city did work with neighbors. We also worked with the association. I think that at this point in time, the departments have spent significant staff hours as well as energy reviewing this and their technical expertise. The commission continued this item for several weeks to allow staff to review this. Given everything that we've seen up until this date, we are supporting the department's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. To our staff, one of the public speakers mentioned that procedurally no notice was given of the new haul route. Apparently the new haul route was taken up at some point in the process, and so we would be required to go out and give notice of that again. Does that, any comment on that?
Sure. When we have a haul route hearing and an item is continued, we send out a letter to the interested parties that showed up at that hearing, informing them of the continued date. So the original haul route was noticed to the 300-foot radius. Anyone that showed up or showed interest in the form of a letter or statement, they were all noticed of the continued date for the hearing, and that is our practice.
Okay, thank you. And also, something was mentioned about the haul route imposing upon private property. I'm not quite sure I followed that, but
So the ingress and egress easement is on their title, and we had a copy of
it's on the title of the applicant.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so as far as the documentation that we have before us, the ingress and egress shows that that's the applicant's property.
They can use that easement for ingress and egress, correct?
Yes, sir?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Honor. I think, Councilman, sorry. She's talking about a different property, about trespassing. I'm talking about trespassing on my client's property, not on the ingress, egress.
Okay.
So there's one street that goes up to multiple driveways, and when it's coming out of the property, it's trespassing on my client's property. That's what I'm talking about, not the ingress,
Thank you very
egress.
much. Have we looked at that issue? No. Are you familiar with that issue? No? The staff? Okay.
And also the notice is not...
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. All right.
Interrupt, but
Any other questions
it
or
is not
comments?
his client's property.
No, it's okay, sir. Thank you. I just wanted that clarification. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so given the testimony and recommendation from Council District 5, we'll move to deny the appeal and sustain the determination of the Board of Building and Safety Commissioners in approving, second by Mr. Cedillo. This is subject to the conditions of approval. Any objections? See none, so ordered. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our meeting. We have one item remaining, which is public comment. First speaker is Herman. Herman?
Presidente, as you know, Mr. Bald Chair, there's been some issues regarding the gentrification in our communities. It's overwhelming that you allow such non-participation and discriminations towards those of us of the public to protest on the hearings. After all, PDQ made the news. That's just the roosters by his house. But again, you heard the protest. You guys allow people to submit their information as developers, and then they make all these sudden changes that kind of causes a destruction of our community, and we get very intolerable about that. It's similar to the issue with Nuri the jury, the bitch from CD6, who has the pimps going to her neighborhood and developing sweatshop clubs and interrupting the children's education to an occupational of bitch, bitch, bitch.
Israel Rodriguez.
My name is Israel Rodriguez. I'm here to speak to the City Planning Commission regarding a development being proposed for CD13. It is a 8-story hotel room with a bar in the downstairs lobby and a 250-space parking lot. I am one of the nearby occupants within 500 feet. I just wanted to speak out on behalf to raise the concerns over displacement, rent control, affordable housing, and just to speak on that behalf, just to make sure that the people within the 500-foot radius aren't affected with increases in rent, and also because it is going to be an establishment with alcohol. I've lived in my residency for 3 years. There was, before we had security guards, plenty of smashed windows overnight, along with lots of drunk traffic. It was very disruptive to our community. We couldn't park outside. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. The puppet. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you.
The puppet, well, I'll speak. speak for the puppet. I will imitate the puppet. So, in planning and land use, we have a pimp. In CD6, we have a planning pimp named Nuri the Pimp Martinez. Yes, we have a planning, not just a pimp, but a planning pimp, Nuri Martinez, the planning pimp, putting pimps in her district, putting projects before you with pimps, drug dealers, robbers, con artists, and who knows, those burglars, those rushing burglars they're looking for, they could all be working for Nuri. Nuri the burglar meister, Nuri the grand jury meister. So we're here to bitch about the bitch of CD6.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much. Back. Thank you.